Hello, Nate.
Hello, Greg. Hello, everybody out there on the internet. It's time for another episode of What's This Bird Live. Welcome, one and all, to the ABA social media feeds. We're excited to talk birds and birding with you. Greg has put together a bunch of wonderful photos from our various, well, actually one group, What's This Bird group, and we're going to talk a little bit about identification of birds and birding, and of course, happy to talk to all of you out there on the internet. Hello, Nancy Kishin from Kentucky, Gavin Allvine, R.I. Davio from New York, Vinod from India. Hello, Scott Hickman finally joining us for live. Kelly Smith from Rochester, New York. Not Kelly Smith who works with us, but a different Kelly Smith. Blaine Bowen from Arkansas, Anuj from Fargo, Joe from Michigan, Kay Whitechillis from Virginia. Hello to all of the people. Manny Majority, they're coming in. They're streaming in. Greg,
that's awesome because Facebook.
Facebook is,
I'm watching Facebook. So if you're wondering what Nate is doing there, one of the things we do here is that we watch the comments on YouTube and on Facebook. And if you've got something to say, if you've got a question, well, chime in the comments, and we're watching, and we'll try to get to you. And Facebook's being a little slow here. I don't see anybody in Facebook yet.
It says we've got a few people there. I don't know. Facebook is constantly a pain in our cloacas. So we are constantly trying to deal with what's going on there. YouTube has been a happy home for us for a while now, and we're excited to have everybody there chiming in with your hellos.
We got Quincy from Florida popping in.
Hello, Quincy. So what we do here is a bi-weekly program where we talk about birds and birding. Greg grabbed some photos from our What's This Bird Facebook group, which is a friendly community where people can take photos, videos, audio, snaps, or even descriptions and drawings of birds that they have seen in their backyards, and they're out in the field and wherever they are, and have a group of people help to identify those and hopefully learn a little bit about birds and bird identification while we go. Every once in a while, we get some really neat photos that we want to focus on, either because they caused a lot of interesting discussion in that group or because it's a great time of year to talk about certain groups of birds. I think you'll see a theme here for this episode, as Greg has done for the last few. And, of course, you are out there. We are live. We are coming at you, sitting in our respective offices in Chicago and in North Carolina, ready to talk birds and birding with you. Eric Yanyo, good afternoon from Pittsburgh. Yeah. You're able to listen live. A lot of new folks coming to us from live, hopefully to have a little lunch hour birding session,
awesome.
Little bird discussion. We're excited to have you here, everybody. Hello to all of you. If I missed
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely.
If you have any questions, comments about birds and bird identification, please let us know. We're happy to take a tangent to talk about whatever it is you've got on your mind.
Oh, gosh, tangents. We never do that.
No, yeah, of course. It's been the great bane of us as we are trying to become more of a, we're trying to take snippets of these posts and put them on, the various quick, the short micro video social media feeds, TikTok and Instagram Reels and what have you. And we never know exactly where to snip those, as Greg was lamenting before we got on here, because this is just one long hour-long conversation about birds that all kind of blends together like a cline of Savannah sparrows from east to west. So, we're excited to have you here and excited to talk birding with all of you all here in the group. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, boy, I don't know about you, but it is summer here. It's been
wet. It's
so
been
hot, and it's been really dry. No, except for last night. Last night, it poured on us like tropical. I woke up this morning, looked outside, and it was tropical humid, and everything was soaked through. Chicago got really slammed last night with the weather.
We had the most rain in the Piedmont of North Carolina since Hurricane Fran in 1994.
Wow.
There's a place that I used to bird in the Chapel Hill area called Eno River State Park. It's a great birding site if you're in the Chapel Hill, Durham area. And there's a sign there at the park that says the Eno River got this high, during 1994's Hurricane Fran. And
Yeah.
then there were photos, lots of photos online showing the water reaching that sign again for the first time in 30 years, which is
Wow.
says a lot about how much water is in the air down here in the southeast these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know if they are in the air yet, but they're getting close. The piping plover chicks on Montrose Beach, which always make, I mean, they made international news, but they always make regional and national news. And right now we're having a, I think, I'm sure somebody will correct me because, hey, we do this live off the fly with no notes, on the fly with no notes.
Yep. By-wire birding here, folks.
And it is. And I think, so there are 3 chicks on the beach right now and 3 adults. And I think that's an all-time high to have 3 chicks survive this long. And there was a peregrine working the beach this morning, but the monitors are out there
doing what the monitors do.
Away? You know, I don't know if they do.
Or something?
Well, I mean, the birds are in a fenced-in area.
Well, that doesn't stop a peregrine falcon.
No, but it stops the people that are out there.
Oh, yeah, fair enough. Oh, to distract the chicks and make them move when the peregrine falcon comes
distract the peregrine, yeah.
Yeah.
But the plover chicks seem to be doing quite well. I would imagine that if they're not flying yet, they will be very soon. Precocious as they are.
That's great news. Gavin Alvine out on the YouTube comments wants to hear our thoughts about Avalist. Do you have any thoughts about Avalist, Greg? Have you put your thoughts together about Avalist? Avalist, of course, for folks who may not know, is the kind of working global taxonomy that was put together by a number of global taxonomic bodies. They've been working to create that sort of common checklist of birds for around the world for 2 or 3 years now. They just released their findings maybe about a month ago now. It's something I don't know. Like I'm not a taxonomist enough to know whether some of the splits and in this case a lot of the lumps are a good thing. I will say my kind of knee-jerk reaction, and this is just coming from me. This is not the opinions of the American Birding Association or
that goes for both of us
sponsors. I found it. I feel like some of the lumps of. I feel like eBird was pushing towards a certain style of taxonomy, a phylogenetic style, where a lot of these sort of splits. They allowed some of these splits to happen, or allowed to recognize some of these splits, especially in Asia and in Polynesia, that were sort of. I don't know how well they were documented or how well the science has been done on them, but like felt like good splits. It was sort of a vibes-based taxonomy to some extent, and Avalist pulls a lot of that back, which is strange to me. Although it does allow some splits in the New World that felt things that people have talked about but not necessarily have gone through with, things like red-legged thrush and greater Antillean peewee. It feels weird to me that those were split, but some of the island thrush and some of the birds in the Polynesia were lumped all back together, like some massive lumps of like 8 or 9 species that eBird had accepted. I don't know. I don't know how I feel. It's an odd thing. Life List podcast with George Armistead and Alvaro did talk to a couple people from that working group. I've not listened to that yet. I keep meaning to. But I think that there's some insight there that's pretty interesting. We've been talking about doing something on our podcast for it, a reaction or getting some folks. That's still in the works. I've not put that together. That may come in the next few weeks. But it's interesting. Some of the splits we expected didn't happen. Some of the lumps we didn't expect it to happen. I don't know. It's
well, and that's
weird.
always
it's weird.
The way these things go, whether it's NACC or eBird or whoever we're talking about. That happens. We sit here in armchair quarterback it, and then we're like,
right, we're just birders. I'm not a scientist.
But I mean, some of the the ABA checklist committee sent me and other people who work on the checklist a spreadsheet with all of the changes highlighted and outlined, and it is kind of overwhelming. I started to go through it, and my brain just glazed over. But I will say that some of the name changes for ABA area birds are kind of, some are small and meaningless, and then others are kind of like, wait, there was really no, like the sage grouse.
The sage grouse is unnecessary.
So
feel
I
like
don't know what the thinking is there.
So I think that the idea, from my perspective, from what I understand, is that eBird and McCall and Cornell Lab have always said that like they're fine with like local names for a lot of these birds, which makes sense. Like no one's going to go to Gunnison grouse and say or greater sage grouse and Gunnison grouse instead of greater sage grouse and Gunnison sage grouse. I don't see that happening. I don't see ABA area birders changing that, but I don't know. Island thrush just split. Sorry, Gavin. There was one I forget that eBird had split across many islands in the South Pacific, and they lumped them all back together. I think there were a couple species. I can't remember which one offhand. You're catching me off guard. I looked at it and I was like, that's a little disappointing. And then I kind of put it back and I haven't really thought about it all that much since then. And probably won't until eBird makes the changes to my list on there, changes the numbers on my eBird account, to be completely honest.
Yeah. Got a quick shout out to Nate from Minnesota. Len Kopka's here, who says he's going to lose a lot of lifers due to the lumps in
Peter Kessner,
Avalist.
the world listing, the top guy, lost like 39 lifers and dropped back below 10,000 again, which is wild considering the big move that was made, when he reached 10,000. I guess I'll have to do it again.
Yeah. Mia's here. Hi,
Weird
Mia.
Stuff.
And Daphne and Rose.
Hey, Mia, good to see you again.
All right, I think we have
Tony Diamond from New
bumped.
Brunswick and from Anna Cortez, Angela Miner from the Smoky Mountains, the beautiful Smoky
We
Mountains.
have bumped up upon the
Manny Majoran
edge.
says that they saw the chicks, the piping plover chicks.
Oh yeah. I mean there's a crowd out there almost every day. But Nate,
have we vamped too long, Greg?
We have
birds?
bumped up against the
first.
clock. We are bumping up against the clock right here.
Yep.
I gotta push us a
Nothing
little
like
bit.
nothing like a little ill-informed Avalist
because
chat to really
you've got something else to talk about quickly before we get to the
American
birds.
Birding Podcast, the most recent episode. Great conversation with Maui Forest Bird Recovery Project's Hannah Mounts, who talks about all the kind of interesting stuff they're doing there. The mosquitoes are going out on the islands. They're still waiting to see whether that will be successful or not, but they have high hopes, and some really interesting news with Alala, I forget how it's pronounced, the Hawaiian crow on the island of Maui as well. Apparently they're on a nest, the first wild Alala nest in decades.
Wow. So just for those of you who aren't aware of what Nate was referring to when he said the mosquitoes, right. But when he said the mosquitoes are out there, is so what they're doing, and correct me if I get it a little bit wrong here. They are dropping sterilized male mosquitoes by drone.
Yeah, so they're not sterilized, but in effect, it's sterilized is a good way to think about it. They are male mosquitoes that have been infected with Wolbachia virus that makes them they can mate with the female mosquitoes, but eggs that are produced from that pairing are sterile and will not hatch.
Right.
And so in that way, after a female mosquito breeds, she dies. And so this way, the hope is that this will bring down the population of the mosquitoes in these places where these birds are. The mosquitoes obviously being the vector for avian malaria, which has caused so much destruction among Hawaiian forest birds over the last several decades. Those mosquitoes are going out. They're dropping them with helicopters and drones and all sorts of cool stuff.
Great podcast episode. All right. We're going to go to my home state, Illinois. And I don't know, this bird looks really familiar to me.
Smithfield, Illinois. So things to think about. We've got a little perching bird here.
Yep.
We've got so it's gripping the end of a branch. It's got relatively large head and long tail and an upright posture, which says to me flycatcher immediately just off the dome. So we're thinking about flycatchers. Things to think about include wing bars, presence and absence of wing bars, the color of the bill and the amount of light coloration on the bill. Can't really see the bill all that well in this photo. No wing bars though, which is pretty interesting, and relatively short wings on this bird. Dark color. Yeah.
There's some markings on the wing coverts, which are the greater and lesser.
Though? I don't think that they maybe
not,
bars.
but no
wing edging, perhaps.
Fringing,
covert edging,
yeah.
fringing. That's the term.
One thing to note about features like wing bars is that the pale tips on the greater and lesser wing coverts, so basically the shoulder of a bird, is what forms the wing bars. And
wing bars are 2 words, not one, as I learned
Yes.
when I wrote a field guide and had it as one word throughout.
So
Sorry, Rick Wright. He got mad at me.
typically, they are pale or white. There's a few instances where the wing panel is white and the wing bars are black. Those are usually tropical birds, and usually non-migratory to a certain degree. But typically,
I never really thought about that.
typically what happens is that the wing bars are white fringing or fringing or on the ends of the feathers, and the white tips on the feathers, and get my thought together here, wears off faster than the rest of the feather. It's surmised that's one of the reasons why gulls have black wingtips, is because the feathers with the melanin in it have a little more structural integrity than white
stronger.
Feathers.
Yep.
They don't fall apart as fast. So the wing bars,
a lot of white birds have black wingtips.
right, and
Black on the flight feathers.
exactly, and as the bird ages, the wing bars can get less and less and less noticeable, and that can confuse people. So as you said, it's a flycatcher. It's in Illinois in the summer. That really narrows it down
to like
the
maybe 3 or 4
list to
species.
just a few. We don't see any rufous on it, so that's great crested flycatcher is out the door.
It is awfully dark too. The
it
whole
is
coloration
awfully
is
dark.
very dark charcoal, kind of gray. Whereas in a lot of our flycatchers, you see a greenish or brown.
Yeah, and the wing bars, as you said, are non-committal at best.
Barely rise to bars.
So that kind of rules out any of the empedonics. But what we can see is this bird's structure and the color. I mean, if you squint at it, the head is the darkest part of it, which is a big clue. But in various kinds of lighting, the 2 species that are most confused here at this time of year are eastern phoebe and eastern wood pewee. And this is one of those 2. So let's take a look and see really what the differences are. And, you can see that the coloration is different. The phoebe has a whiter throat, a darker head. It's got a black bill versus pewee. Typically, eastern wood pewee typically shows some yellow on the lower mandible.
Yeah, they're more like the empids in that regard.
The pewee is greener, grayer, versus, as you said, kind of a slate. However, this time of year, that kind of stuff, take with a grain of salt and a cup of coffee, because young birds, the color is quite variable. In this bird here, which is the bird on the far left, the one we're talking about, we can't really see the chest. Phoebe often shows a little a little grayish smudge on the breast, which pewee typically doesn't, but it can.
Little, yeah.
It can, but structurally, these birds are quite similar, except for 2 things. And those are the wings and the tail. And if you look at the wings...
I would add one more thing, so 3 things.
Oh, go ahead.
The feet. The legs and the feet, too.
Yeah.
But we can discuss that, yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at the wing tips, that's the primary tips of the eastern wood pewee.
The pointed part of the wing that comes beyond the kind of shelf of feathers.
Exactly.
On the wings. The tertials, as we call it. Yeah.
The wings are longer. Eastern wood pewee is a long-distance migrant that goes to the Amazon in the winter.
Yep.
Eastern phoebe winters in Illinois in small
I was gonna
numbers.
say, we usually get 3 or 4 on every Christmas bird count down here.
Yeah. So they don't fly
Or on
as
the coast.
far. They don't fly as far. They don't have as long wings, which makes a phoebe look proportionally longer tailed, and it actually is a little bit longer tailed. But the short wings make that tail look even longer. Whereas the long wings of a peewee kind of give it more of a, I don't know what that shit. It's almost like it's wearing a cape or something.
Yeah,
that
like
comes
an
down over
apostrophe
the
or
base of the
something.
tail.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then as Nate mentioned quickly, peewees are the same genus as olive-sided flycatcher, and all of the birds in that genus have these long wings, relatively short tail compared. When I say relatively, it's, again, as I mentioned, it gives the appearance of a shorter tail, although birds like olive-sided flycatcher actually do have shorter tails. But they have ridiculously small feet.
Yeah,
like
tiny feet.
swallows.
Yeah.
I mean, they really, if you can get a good look at it, if it looks like the feet were drawn on by a kid and they're just like too small and weird, it's a good bet that you've got one of the peewees.
A lot of times when a peewee's perched, like the belly is like right up against the branch too, whereas an eastern phoebe is kind of standing a little bit more upright.
Well, just like we see here, yeah.
Exactly. Good questions from Joseph Grasser and Mary Hansen in the YouTube comments. Why couldn't this be considered for vagrant black phoebe, which is structurally very similar to eastern phoebe, more or less the same. Looks like it's in a different. I would say black phoebe would have an entirely black head and chest, and though we can't really see the chest very well on this bird, we can see that yellow chin kind of coming up around the bottom, and I can see the breast as white. So it looks like it's got a lot of white on the front of that bird, whereas a black phoebe, that would be entirely dark.
Yeah, exactly. That little bit of white coming up around the collar, we wouldn't see that at all in a black phoebe.
Yeah, and and hopefully in a photo like this, you would see, phoebe is very active. It's frequently flying out. It's coming back. It's sitting the other way. So hopefully, if you have a potential black phoebe, that bird's going to come out, grab a bug, come back to the same twig, and maybe be facing the other direction. In which case, the identification is quite obvious.
Yeah,
much more obvious.
Definitely.
Yeah, but from this angle, maybe if the bird is turned a little bit more to the left, that becomes a more difficult ID from the photo that we've been giving. But yeah, that range is going to be the main driver here. The black phoebe does show up extra limitedly every once
a little
in a while,
bit.
Not
I've seen a
not as common
fair
as
number
Phoebe. Say's phoebe is the one that shows up pretty regularly.
Say's phoebes are bred in Illinois.
Oh, really? Oh, that's funny.
With
we
eastern
have about
phoebes,
half a dozen records.
Yeah. I mean, one thing too, I've seen a fair number of black phoebes, but if memory serves me correct, let me just see if Sibley says anything about this real quick. I don't think that black phoebe shows any difference in tone between the head.
I was thinking about that too, but I wasn't exactly sure, so I didn't say anything.
Between the head and the back, and it only does. It only does
when
in
I've seen black phoebes
juvenile plumage.
Yeah, well, this could be,
Yeah, but no, the little bit of white on the collar rules out black phoebe.
Yeah, Nelson Pascuzzi says, wonder what the vagrancy is from black phoebe. Say's phoebe shows up in the state sometimes. Yeah, Say's phoebe is pretty regular in the East. Multiple records every fall. Sometimes they stick around quite. There was one in my county a couple weeks ago, a couple years ago. A black phoebe, way less likely, and I'm not entirely sure why that is. I don't think they migrate as far. Whereas Say's phoebe is pretty highly migratory, and those migratory birds tend to be the ones that lose track of where they're going more frequently than non-migratory ones. Black phoebe is not as migratory as either phoebe, for that matter. I think they mostly stay put, but I would need to check my range map.
Got Martin joining us from
Just
Kenya.
Speaking from the hip.
Hello, Martin.
Wow. Welcome.
Yeah, and I think, as you were saying, I think that black phoebes are a little more tied to arid habitats than Says. Says are kind of all over the place in the West. the way that eastern phoebe is all over the place in the east. They're in multiple kinds of habitats, from deep woods to open farmland, and Say's phoebe is kind of the same.
Yeah.
Although Say's tends to like open areas a little better.
I was thinking black phoebe. Well, I mean, outside of the ABA area, black phoebe is pretty wide ranging throughout the tropics too.
Yeah.
In the way that Gavin says there are parts of Colorado where all three breed close by. That's pretty interesting.
That is interesting.
Triple phoebes.
Okay, so this one.
This one threw me when you first threw it up. Greg.
Well, it threw me
I'm
when
not
I
ashamed
first
to
saw
admit
it. No,
this
this
is a classic. What's this bird? Photo, because you pulled it. Yeah. So, what are we looking at here? We're looking at a perching bird with apparently kind of a long body, strong looking legs.
Yeah.
A little bit of pattern in the wing. If I were just looking at the photo on the right.
Yep.
I'll admit, like, my gut said northern mockingbird, and then I look at the photo on the left and I'm like, tail's not quite right, not long enough. I have seen there are young northern mockingbirds around that look kind of weirdly proportioned. Northern mockingbird tends to have a little bit longer and stronger legs, a little bit thicker, not quite the twiggy legs that we see in this one. But your gut says northern mockingbird, and then your brain immediately says, "Hold on a second," and that's where we're on this bird.
And so it's like once you start drilling down, you're like, okay, that's a young northern mockingbird, and you start drilling down in your head because something doesn't look right.
Something doesn't look right. Yeah, a little itch in your bird recognition part of your brain.
So northern mockingbird is one of the mimic thrushes, and the young ones are spotted. At least mockingbirds are spotted like thrushes
like
are.
Like a thrasher.
And like a thrasher. They have a fair amount of spotting on the breast and a little bit of pattern on the back. And Nate, as you like to point out here, when fledgling birds are up and out of the nest and moving around, they develop adult-like wing and tail feathers. And that's always a good place to look, because even on an almost unidentifiable juvenile bird, the wing and tail feathers, I mean, Google up pictures of fledgling cedar waxwing.
Oh, yeah.
The bird is like streaked all over and looks weird. You're like, what the heck is it? But it's got that big yellow band on the tail from the moment it jumps out of the nest.
I was going to say Eastern towhee is a good example of that too.
Eastern towhee is another one.
Big black flight feathers with white patches on them. The bird itself will be like the streaky brown tan mess, but the flight feathers will give you the identification.
And the two things that don't fit here, taking that into consideration, is one, it doesn't have the wing pattern of a mockingbird. It's missing the white flashes.
The big white patch.
The big white flashes that mockingbirds use to display. And it's also missing the big white patches on the end of the tail. I mean, the outer tail feathers, which are the ones that lay underneath when the bird is at rest, those should look mostly white, but especially the tips. Yeah. And this bird does not have this. This bird has a warbler tail.
It does.
And so
you got more.
What is our most confusing young warbler?
Whenever I am tasked with a bird that doesn't look like anything but looks vaguely warblerish in the southeast, it's pine warbler. It's always pine warbler every single time. Pine warblers are notoriously variable, especially the young birds. They can be so weird looking, and they're out and about right now, and they can be just about anywhere. But the pine warblers, one thing you can always count on for pine warblers is that they have nice, broad, clear white wing bars, and that distinctive white streak down the middle of the tail. From the underpart, and that's a pine warbler, even when they look ratty and gray and
look like mockingbirds
and look like mockingbirds. Well, it's funny that those two birds are what we have, because whenever let me back up. young northern mockingbird is one of those birds that does tend to throw me because they look so weird and lanky and odd compared to the adults.
Yeah.
And young pine warbler is exactly the same way. So these are two birds that we're talking between that are always very confusing in this plumage this time of year. So it's interesting that these are the two that we're trying to differentiate between.
Yeah. And I included 3 pine warblers in various states. The one at the top there is a very recently fledged bird.
Looks like
I'm going to guess it's a male because it has a teeny little bit of yellow in the throat, but that could be reflection. Who knows?
Yeah.
But as the bird progresses, it especially females in first year. What's it exactly?
It doesn't get a lot better.
It doesn't. Especially first year females, they're just gray, nondescript.
With wing bars.
What is that? And with wing bars and little eye arcs. One of the field marks that's pointed out for the male and some to some degree adult female is the spectacle kind of look.
Kind of like the eye arcs. Yeah,
but here with a little bit of yellow or pale in the lores that kind of makes it look like eyeglasses. Here we don't have that in these plumages at all. And as you can see in the lower of the two on the left of the bird in question, you see that kind of almost cute look with the eye arcs and the big dark eyes. Even when they're young, because northern mockingbirds have yellow irises, and but even when they're young, those eyes are not completely dark. When they're flying around, those eyes are not completely dark, and they're kind of you can see the northern mockingbird on the right. They're kind of staring eyes that this bird on the left just doesn't have. It's just
and a couple things that we were pointing out earlier, just worth noting on that northern mockingbird and the composite is notice the wing pattern. So the 2 wing bars and more,
and the big white flash,
a little bit of
base
fringing,
of the primaries,
fringing on the coverts, but as you say, the big white flash, which even on the folded wing you can see. And the big thick legs. I mean, it's a mockingbird is a mocking thrush. These mimids, they spend a lot of time on the ground.
Yeah.
They have big thick legs for walking around, as opposed to kind of the little spindly dark legs that you get for a lot of our warblers. Though pine warbler being kind of an exception to that. They are bigger warblers. They're more robust. They tend to have a larger bill, bigger legs, all that stuff.
Yep. Pine warbler.
Pine warbler, great bird. Always is a very confusing bird here in the southeast throughout the range, just because they can give you so many looks. Lucy and Bob Duncan notes in the comments: "What a relief to know not the only one stumped sometimes by juvie pines." But the notched tail is a giveaway too. Yeah, another thing to note. Not super unique. I think there's some other warblers that have notched tails, but I have to go back and look at the book.
And those things are like. When you see the bird, you see the birds on the left in the comp. So those would be the 3 in the middle. All 3 of those kind of have notched tails. The 2 older birds most definitely do.
Yeah, older birds.
But
for sure.
The way that birds layer their feathers as they're moving around, that can be maddeningly hard to see and get a definite read on. But, as we've talked with juvenile birds, but particularly warblers, look at the wing and tail pattern, because the body feathers can do almost anything, but the wing and the tail pattern is going to be your key in the with specifically juvenile birds.
Andrew Haffington points out, in the field, wouldn't size immediately eliminate mocker? Yes, and
maybe.
No, yes, probably, maybe. But you never really know. And of course, we're dealing with photos here, so.
Yeah, and one thing that's always a regular in the What's This Bird group is people posting an image of a bird on a bare branch without anything around it to give an idea of how big it is, and saying, this bird was huge, it was a hawk. It's no, it's an American robin. And when your brain is seeing something like against the sky or it makes it look bigger. And I have a big silver maple tree about 200 feet away from where I sit in my yard. and it's got some bare branches on top, and a lot of birds perch up in those branches. Got everything from goldfinches to Cooper's hawks set up there. And I find that it's an interesting exercise to look at them without any optics and try to figure out what it is based on size, because your brain tries to throw it off. And I find that things like goldfinches look ridiculously tiny, but robins look really big. And then when you get a crow or a Cooper's hawk up there, it's like, whoa.
Yeah. No, it's true.
turkey
Size
vulture.
is one of those things that can be really difficult to determine absent of any sort of context. And I think anyone who's spent some time in the field with a bird that it seems bigger than it should be knows that. And, experienced birders, size, you get better at determining that sort of thing for sure. And as I've said many times before on this program, I think a lot of times when we talk about size, we're talking about proportion. And proportion is a good tool for using to identify pine warbler or northern mockingbird as well most of the time. Mockingbird looks kind of lanky and long-legged, very long-tailed. Pine warbler less so, although as we can see in photos like this, that can be misleading sometimes as well when you get say, foreshortening or a bird stretching or poofed up or any sort of the ways they can manipulate the feathers to look differently than what you expect.
Size matters. And I'm out of here. Okay, let's go to California.
That kind of program.
Okay, Nate. I will let people know.
This is another one that took me a while. Yeah. So
if you're picking up a theme here, folks,
this is a great one, Greg.
It is sort of the rattiest passerines -1 that I could find, but that is summer birding.
So this is going to be a bird that I think birders who spend time or live in the West are going to be a little bit more attuned to, because this is a bird that threw me.
I would say birders,
not a bird that I encounter a lot.
I would say birders who are specifically in California.
Yeah,
because California is its own thing, man. There's stuff happening in California that doesn't happen in the rest of the ABA area. And
for sure. So
this is a perfect example.
It's a great bird because it shows a lot of the issues that you deal with when we're dealing with single photos, which is difficult angles, difficult perspectives, of foreshortening, and of course birds that you don't always see a lot of, and so they don't really take your mind when you look at the photo immediately. So when I looked at this bird, I see kind of I want to say largest, and I mean that in terms of like a passerin, kind of thick-bodied, long-tailed. I get the impression of a long tail here, but the head just looked so odd to me. And my first impression of this, and I'll tell you, was towhee, but like the pine warbler, it was like not something that fit comfortably.
Let's back up just a step.
Super eager on it. Yeah. So big bill, finch. Sparrow bill,
giant bill,
big legs,
and you see a bill like that. Like if I just showed you the bill, if you said grosbeak, be like, okay,
you'd be wrong. Yeah.
If you know the grosbeaks, the bills are different, and but the thing that points away from any of our grosbeaks is the lack of pattern that we can see on this bird. It is just this kind of even slaty gray with kind of a rich brown tail and a massive bill.
The massive bill is what messes, because everything says to me California towhee.
Yeah.
But long tail, overall brown, very little pattern, but the head's like, I couldn't rectify the head, pattern on the head. It looks like it's got a little bit of pattern on the cheek. Maybe a little bit above the eye. The bill certainly doesn't look right for towhee, which tends to have a little bit smaller bill. So I admit I did not get this one until you told me, Greg, and then I was like, oh yeah, obviously.
Well, yeah, and it's one of those things where if you live where this bird lives, immediately. But for most of us, across the ABA area, we don't live where this bird lives, and so the other birds with big conical bills are cardinalids, things like cardinals, grosbeaks, but also sparrows have big bills.
Some of them.
And some have little
some
thin
California
bills.
ones do. A couple different species in California have big bills.
So one neat thing about several species of sparrows in the ABA area, song sparrow, Savannah sparrow, fox sparrow, is that there are subspecies across the ABA area that vary kind of wildly from east to west. And when you get out, if your birding experience is mostly in the east, when you get out west and see things like a Savannah sparrow or a song sparrow,
those belding Savannah sparrows down
they
in
just
Southern
look
California,
completely different from what you're used to.
Yeah.
But none of them approaches how different fox sparrows can be.
yeah. Fox sparrows is wild, and I think this bird is even because it's so ratty, because it's clearly missing some feathers on the body. Its head looks like it looks like a very hot bird look. Like this is a bird that is in the heat and is molting and looks a little rough. But yeah. So those California fox sparrows, and as soon as you said, Greg, fox sparrow, I was like, oh. Yeah, obviously, this is one of those thick-billed fox sparrows that they get out on the West Coast, and I think I underappreciate how thick the bill is.
Yeah, it's like one of the African seed crackers. I mean, it's
really looks
crazy
like
big.
Yeah,
it's crazy big, and if you're a birder that's as I said, your experience is out east, and you see one of these things for the first time. I mean, look at the thick-billed fox sparrow on the bottom. And just imagine yourself growing up in Pennsylvania and birding in Pennsylvania and being dropped in California and having one of those things pop up in your face. I don't think you'd be able to figure it out.
With thick-billed fox sparrow, actually. Not Pennsylvania, but something similar to that.
And I remember when I was up in the Pribilofs a few years ago, I saw one of the Aleutian fox sparrows popped up on one of the crab pots. I'm like, oh my God, what is? It's got to be some Asian thing,
Asian thing.
It's got to be something. And it's like, nope, it's a fox sparrow.
Fox sparrow.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. Gavin Elvain notes correctly that Avalist decided not to split this one, though I don't think the North American Classification Committee has really engaged with that.
Yeah, I don't think.
So I don't think people have done all the science that needs to be done or what they want to the standard they want done to talk about that. But it's always been one of those things that's like a good candidate for a split. Gavin, he also says Aleutian song sparrow. Did you mean Aleutian song sparrow or Aleutian?
No, fox sparrow.
Fox sparrow. There's a fox sparrow up there too. I remember seeing a sooty fox sparrow up there when I was up there.
I believe it is sooty. Yeah.
There are song sparrows up there too that are big.
Oh yeah.
Chonky. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Bergman's rule and Golger's rule.
Yeah. So we are now going to. Here's another one.
This is another one. I'm happy to say I got this one on the first try, but this is also a bird that I encounter somewhat regularly where I live as well. So this is this is a weird one. And I understand why
there
it
is
popped up on our West.
So we talk about things like feel and gestalt here on this program a lot.
Vibes.
Vibes, exactly. And so when you see a bird, a juvenile like this, I'm going to just state that flat out. This is a juvenile bird, and that's sort of the theme of today's program. But if you see a bird that you're very familiar with, that you see all the time, in the weird juvenile plumage, you get a vibe of what it is, and a little bit more as you see the bird a little bit more. Yeah, no problem. That's what it is. Move on. But if you don't, and I will be honest, I learned something, probably something that I had tucked away in my head, but couldn't bring up if I needed to recall it. I learned something about this species from this photo. So what do we got here?
The first thing that comes to mind is we've got a small streaky passerine. The streaking on the breast seems important, and when I see that, I'm kind of instantly making assumptions on what it possibly could be. And so the birds that I would consider for this would be be nesting in Wisconsin potentially. With thrushes, so like Swainson's thrush, hermit thrush, are they too far? Is that too far south? I would think that they're on
No, hermit thrushes really. The Swainsons are further north.
Okay, so on the plate, thrasher also kind of a bird that would be streaky on there, and Ovenbird. So thrasher can be pretty.
Well, and
Louisiana
water thrush.
All right, fair enough. They have water thrush. It doesn't.
Yeah, I mean that part of Wisconsin is sort of like it's south of the breeding range of northern water thrush, but not that much, and it's at the very northern edge of Louisiana.
Yeah, so that's a good shout having those on there, but I'll tell you, they immediately get eliminated for me because of the color of the flight feathers. So we talked about the flight feathers being kind of important for these young birds, because those are essentially the flight feathers that they'll carry into their first year and look very similar to those of the adult birds. That kind of greenish brown, greenish khaki is a really unique color. And it doesn't say water thrush to me, though we should consider water thrushes because it does have a warblery bill. Thrasher, no, the leg color is wrong, the bill shape is wrong, so no thrasher.
And thrashers are streaked on the back as well as on the front, and
for sure.
I mean this isn't a thrush bill.
No, thrushes, and it's not a thrush build either. Vibey,
it's not
look like a thrush, and I think that a part of that is that the legs look a little too thin. And the belly looks a little too full, though that's kind of a difficult thing to determine for a bird that's kind of puffed up. But it just doesn't.
All young thrushes, whether you're talking a solitaire or varied thrush, anything in between, robins, the younger they are, the more spotted they are. And
this is more streaky than spotted.
This bird doesn't have any spots on it. It has streaks on the breast.
Yeah.
The rest of it's fairly plain. And it has bold wing bars, and that is what threw me, is like putting all those pieces together, and that's the thing that I learned.
Yeah, so even so, with the wing bars, and there's enough going for it that makes me think Ovenbird. Just kind of overall coloration, the streaking is very Ovenbirdy, kind of that darker streaking, but like long streaks instead of spots.
Yep.
And I can even see a little bit. So the face gives me a very Ovenbird impression.
It does.
Because it's got like that big eye on a pale face, and it's got that little bit. You can even see a little bit of the eyebrow coming in. So Ovenbird has that really neat pattern on the top of their head with the orange kind of crest, but it's bordered by darker feathers, and you can see a little bit of that coming in, as opposed to like an eyebrow that you would see as you see in the water thrush or even like a plain face.
And that's something I
immediately.
learned,
Ovenbird was the first, like my gut response to this bird, and I'm pleased to say.
And it was mine too.
It was.
It was mine too, except that the wing bars threw me. I learned that when Ovenbirds are very young, they can have fairly bold wing bars that fade off very quickly.
Fade off. Yeah, that's interesting.
The other thing I learned is that water thrush fledglings, because I haven't seen a lot of water thrush fledglings, at least not that
Who
young.
has?
But water thrush fledglings look a lot like the adults, a lot more than a lot of other warblers. The other kind of streaky, sort of default confusing summer warbler in Wisconsin is myrtle, yellow-rumped. And, this bird doesn't tick any boxes for yellow-rumped, which would have streaking all over the place, the back, the sides, the everywhere, and it wouldn't show any green. It's a very gray and brown bird.
I can't say that I've ever seen a juvenile, recently fledged yellow-rumped warbler before.
Oh, I have, and they're very confusing.
I'm too far south. Yeah, I imagine so. Like my pine warblers. Yeah.
But as Nate, as you mentioned, the face of this bird immediately says Ovenbird with that big eye, the open face. We've got the hint of the bold eye ring. The feathers on the crown are growing in, but you can kind of see the dark edges of that crown patch. But it's the streaking on the breast that really kind of seals the deal.
Classic Ovenbird. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a fledgling, juvenile, not a fledgling, a juvenile Ovenbird.
Juvenile and juvenile plumage. And the color, as you say, like.
Oh, I was saying juvenile.
Juvenile.
N-U-L-L. N-U-L-L.
One of them refers to the plumage, and one refers to the state.
Yeah, I know. See, I was just speaking in Chicago accent, which is like right down. It was right down between the two words, right in the middle.
But that kind of khaki green color is very distinctive for Ovenbird,
Yes,
and not a color
is.
that you see a lot in the same kind of understory birds. I think the only one that comes close, at least to my mind, is worm-eating warbler, which would not have the streaking, obviously.
No,
but it's
and
a similar sort of khaki color.
It is, but the color of a worm-eating warbler is unique. I mean, it's like a Lincoln sparrow. They're really, if you see it well, there's no other ABA area bird that has that exact color. If you're lucky enough to have eyes that can discern color. I mean, some people are colorblind or have trouble with color, but if you see that bird, a worm-eating warbler, once you see it, that color is that ochre, green, khaki. It's just a unique color. Anyways, pushing on.
Pushing on. Oh, I just picked my desk.
We are going to go to California again. And this is another bird that we get a lot this time of year. And it is small-ish, streaky heron time of the year. There are young herons and bitterns and night herons and stuff all over the place. And this one shows up a lot. So, what do we got? We got kind of a squat.
Yeah, big
heron.
Longish legs with massive toes, kind of big dagger bill, kind of undeniably a wading bird, a heron, as you say.
Yeah.
Greg. A lot of colors going on this one. A lot of interesting colors. Streaky on the front, but kind of a almost uniform, kind of a rusty brown on the side of the head. It's got a dark cap. It's got a lot of fringing on those wing feathers, on those coverts and tertials. They're all kind of edged in kind of beige, whitish, creamish feather tips. And the bill itself is worth noting. We've got a kind of a bicolored bill here. Dark on the top, pale on the underparts, bright yellow eye. So if I were narrowing this down, I'm thinking night herons are worth considering. I'm thinking green heron is definitely on the agenda. I'm thinking the bitterns, probably more least bittern than American bittern, because American bittern doesn't show as much color. A lot of great pattern on an American bittern, but it's almost that straw color kind of all over instead of.
It is, but juvenile birds
wings.
Again.
They can give you a lot, but so those are the ones I'm thinking of. Yeah, but the dark cap is a good thing to think about as well in the bicolored bill.
It is, and the reason I picked this bird, as I do every summer at one point or another, excuse me, is there is one very obvious slam dunk field mark that's right in our faces here that positively identifies the bird, and even if you isolated the rest. You just clipped out the rest of the bird and just showed this one tiny little part of the bird, you would be able to identify it if you knew where it was
titling a listicle, Greg. Is what crazy field ID that gets one crazy field mark that gets the idea 100% of the time.
Click on through to find out how you can identify birds too. And,
one weird trick.
One weird trick, my friend. And I saw there was on one of the other groups I'm on, I saw a picture of this species flying over, and the person who posted it was sure it was A or B when in fact it was C, and the photo was horrible, backlit, dark, everything else, but you could see this one field mark that just boom, done.
Tell us this what you
so I'm gonna tell us what
to the
it
bottom
is.
of the listicle.
I am. So here we go. The bird is a green heron, and the field mark I'm talking about is that white slash on the malar mustache
like
at the
gape.
base of the bill, from the base of the bill that goes back behind the eye. That is unique, and the bitterns don't have it. The black crown, none of our streaky herons, none of them have that. So if you can see that, that is your slam dunk mark for green heron. Yeah. So there, we are at the bottom of the listicle.
That's right. Yeah, I love a juvenile green heron. I love that pattern that they have. They all seem to have on the mantle and the wing feathers. It's really speckly. You see that sort of in a black crowned night heron as well, as you can see in this image. That's a good way to, and yellow crown for that matter as well.
Yeah.
But it's the mark on the gape that you know, to the mustache, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Greg, but also the kind of the difference in colors on the neck versus on the back. Whereas, black crowned night heron, yellow crowned night heron, bittern, maybe least is a little bit different, but least is its own kind of bag. They're all kind of the same uniformly throughout the body of the bird. Whereas green heron is going to be, the adults have that, wonderful kind of rusty neck and then bright green back, which is really
right.
The name. You can see the difference in those birds, and that's going to be a clue.
Yeah, and it gets a little confusing as black crowned night herons grow into their adult plumage, because they do get black crowns like a green heron, and the color starts changing and shifting, and feathers wear and all of that. One other thing about bitterns, and least bittern has a dark cap like a green heron, and it's got that rufusy kind of brown color on the neck, although it's almost always much paler. There is a dark subspecies of least bittern called Corey's.
The mythical Corey's bittern.
I have seen one. I saw one in the 70s in
I've
Chicago.
Seen Bigfoot, Greg.
It was at Dead Stick. No, it was at Dead Stick Pond. A whole bunch of people got to see it. But really, I think most of the records of the dark least bitterns come from South America, which is kind of. Anyways, the point I was going to make about bitterns is that bitterns are weird little dudes. And when they're in their preferred habitat, they still act weird, but they act weird in ways that are predictable, standing with their heads up like this or doing weird bitter things. You
can't see them even when they're in the middle of a open marsh. Yeah.
But when you get a bittern out in the open, as this green heron in our photo is, they do weird stuff, and they creep or stalk, or like they'll just stop in the middle of a road and stick their head up like, you can't see me, and they act really strange. And so that is something that will stand out a lot when you see an American bittern in a place where they don't belong, like a city park or standing on your neighbor's roof or whatever the heck it is. Is they just act really bizarre.
Yeah. And least bittern is worth noting too. Is truly a least bittern. Green heron is not a big bird, but it is a monster compared to least bittern, which is like freaking impossibly small.
It's the size of a robin.
It's a robin size. Yeah, it's so weird. It's how little that bird is.
It's a robin, but the feet are as big.
The feet are big, and the neck is like long. The body is like the size of a robin. Yeah.
The neck is like 1.5 times the length of the body, or something ridiculous like that.
I can't remember if I've told this story here or elsewhere. I've told this story many times before, but the last least bittern I saw was down in South Carolina, and it was I walked out to Pinckney Island National Wildlife Refuge down by Hilton Head Island, and I was walking around this big heron rookery that they have out there, and the grass had not been mowed. The grass was like maybe 5-6 inches tall, and I was walking through it, and I flushed a least bittern out of the grass, out of tall grass, and it was completely invisible, and then it popped up and flew like 2 feet. It showed the big buff wing patches on its, and like the long neck stretched out, and just like disappeared into another clump of like 6-inch high grass and disappeared again. Could not find it again. Very, very small bird. Very small bird.
Well, and with that, we
did it.
Did we freeze?
Wow, we nailed it. We froze. Oh my gosh.
What just happened?
I don't know, Greg. I don't know if that's a...
Oh, there we go. We're back.
We're back.
There was a technical glitch there for a moment, folks. I thought we lost you.
Yeah. Anyway, we did it. We even with our long vamp about Avalist, Greg, we hit 2:00. Thanks everybody for joining us. Yes. It was nice to talk birds with all y'all, and if you're interested in supporting the sort of programs that we do here, please consider joining the American Birding Association and noting that What's This Bird is the reason that you did so. We certainly appreciate that. And also you get access to all of our wonderful magazines, and access to all of our online stuff, and discounts
ABA
to
community,
our partners,
which is our own social media
Bird
experience
Alert,
and
experience. is. Yeah. Anyway, please consider joining us, and we'll be back in a couple weeks to talk birds with you again. Hopefully, it won't be all baby birds and nasty molting birds, but hey, that's what the people want this time of year. So
it'll be nasty molting shorebirds if.
Oh yeah, the shorebird season's coming up.
We're getting into fall migration already. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, everybody.
All right.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll be back in a couple weeks. Sign up to our newsletter if you want a heads up on whether we're doing that. Thanks, Greg. Thanks all, and
thank
we'll see
you
you next
all,
time.
and see you next time, Nate. Bye.
Bye-bye.